All right. As you can tell, I have a new app. It's Henriksen Bud. So, trial and tribulation. So, I basically had both amps, both the Henriksen Bud and the Henriksen Blue. As far as like trying them out and trying to determine which one I was going to keep, I ended up I started off with the Blue. Let's just put it that way. So, as many of you know, I have a lot of guitars, but I've principally had two amps. One has been the Henriksen Jazz Amp 110ER, which is a great, great amp. So they got it right when Henriksen started. So basically get that polytone sound without the polytone headaches. And that was also in a pretty decent package. It had a 10-inch speaker. This is actually a 6.5-inch speaker, but it has a tweeter in it. And I'll talk a little bit about how I came to decide on the Bud over the Blue. A couple of considerations. I think whenever you try to buy an instrument, a guitar or an amp, you have to think about one. For me, the primary thing is always the sound. If the thing sounds really good, then I want it. I want it as part of my arsenal because it's going to make me want to play a little bit more or a lot more. The second, and depending upon, can order it differently, is the price. You never want to pay outrageous prices for things. So a lot of jazz musicians love, Fender Twins, Fender Deluxe, and I love Fenders, but they're big ass amps. Depending upon where you're playing or depending upon your living situations, you just can't be carrying around 65, 75 pound of equipment. And technology has come such a long way that you can have something like this, which is like very, very small and portable. So, okay, how did I ended up deciding over the Bud over the Blue? At the beginning, I wanted the Blue because I just wanted a single channel. It costs less money. So price point on this is typically about $1,300 versus the Blue, which is about $1,000. So obviously right off the bat, you have a $300 price difference. But what do you get for the money? You get a lot. I think the two biggest thing that you get in the Bud is you get a second channel. So if you're ever playing with an upright bass player or a singer, they can use the second channel. Also, too, you can plug your guitar in, but have a second mic to, make introductions, crack jokes, or just talk about the songs that you're playing. So that's the first thing. So you get two channels. So right off the bat, that's almost like having two amps. The other thing is you get a bright switch on the Henriksen Bud that you do not get on the Blue. Both of them have tweeters, and that's kind of really important, at least for me, because every guitar I have sounds different. I want something that's kind of like transparent, that's going to reproduce the sound. But one of the challenges I always had when I recorded my ES-175D versus my D'Angelico I love the 175. I like the D'Angelico, but there was a tendency for for the 175 to always sound a little bit muddy. So it was almost like I love that sound, but I don't like it. So it just couldn't cut through the mix the same way. I had to always mess around a little bit, and then the 170, the D'Angelico always sounded really nice and crisp. Crisp, let's put it that way. The tweeter kind of solves that problem basically, so I can get the top end on the 175 that I want to. So another reason I chose this is when I A beat them, I liked the blue a lot at the beginning. I really, really did, and tried to sell myself on that one. I liked it. A couple of things. One, it was cheaper. Obviously, money's always a factor. The second thing is that it weighed less. I mean, it's sort of negligible, but the blue is 12 pounds, whereas this bud is 17 pounds. But I think the 5 pounds is pretty negligible. But the thing that I found out about this once I A beat them back and forth is that uh, both sound the same, but somehow I think this had a little bit more power. So, and that's kind of weird. So I'm not a mathematician nor am I an electric guy, but they say they both have 120 watts. But for whatever reason, I was able to get a little bit more power out of that, and I'm never gonna use that. So, and I'll talk about the settings that I have right now. So, basically, for this little thing that I'm doing right now is everything's at 3 o'clock, pretty flat. The tweeter is off. This may sound a little bit different because I just restrung it with round wounds. Believe it or not, I took my flat wounds off, but I do have a wound G. I think the gauge is 11, which I've never, ever, ever really never used. Let's just put it that way. So I've always had 12s or 13s on, and I think it was primarily from trying all these tellies in music stores. All of them were just strung with 10s. I just couldn't do that. I couldn't go to 10s, and I needed something that was wound, so a little bit familiar territory. So I said, let me try, um, you know, 11 with a wound G. So anyway, so you might get a little bit more brightness than you're probably used to hearing me play, but this thing can get really, really warm and dark. Definitely good enough to push with a drummer. The other thing about it is it sounds great with an acoustic guitar, whether my classical guitar or the steel string guitar. So I think overall it's just great that you can get an amp this size. It's basically a high fidelity instrument. Forgot to mention that in both cases, with both the blue and the bud, you're able to. I know with the blue you can do the Bluetooth. I'm not sure with this, but basically you can accompany yourself and be a one man show, a one person show, a one band show. So great amps, great high fidelity, very very easy to EQ. This has a little bit more features in terms of tonal quality, in terms of if you want to shape your sound with the bright switch. It's got the two channels. The channels are independent of each other, so you can set them differently. They both have XLR out, so if you want to put pedals through that stuff, run it through a DI, you can do that. So, all right. So let's hear it a little bit more. This time I'm going to go out with playing finger styles.